Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to be kicking off the entire module when it comes to advertising and specifically Facebook advertising by going ahead and setting up some foundation. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we are speaking the same language, we are talking about the same things, because a lot of people, when they might think of the word Facebook or they think of advertising, they may have some different images, they may have some different feelings, they might have some different experiences or beliefs around it. So before we can even talk about the tactical aspects of how to actually run Facebook advertising, we need to make sure that we are speaking the same language and talking about the same thing. So that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and talk about inside of this training section as we go ahead and break it down step by step. So the very first question that you might have, as always, whenever you're talking about something new is, hey, well, what is Facebook advertising in the first place? So when most people, right, like the over a billion people that use Facebook, when they think about the word Facebook or the social media platform Facebook, they think that it's a platform that you can use to either connect with friends and family or watch funny cat videos or like join a Facebook group or something like that, right? However, when an entrepreneur is thinking of Facebook as a platform, what they are seeing, right, the lens that they're looking at it with, their paradigm, their worldview, is that they are seeing it as a platform that has attention. They are seeing it as a platform that has the eyeballs that can then be used for a profit potential. And of course, for those people out there who kind of, get really sensitive about it, remember, money is a tool. And so it's not just like, hey, we're hungry capitalist people who just want to take advantage of people. No, what it is that we're using the profit to fuel the mission, okay? And so you got to have money in order to fuel any sort of mission. And so yes, profit is essential to be able to fuel getting your message out there to be able to help more and more people. And so these are just tools that we're using in order to do that. And so that's exactly what Facebook advertising is. It's a method of lead generation that is absolutely like a faucet, right? You can imagine like a faucet like in your sink or in your kitchen, right? Is that you can turn on and off to get unlimited amount of leads in a scalable and automated way into your business and then go out there and have more impact, income, and freedom, right? And so when we talk about the visual of what it looks like, obviously we've talked about this in the past, but this is specifically what we're talking about right here, right? We talk about lead generation and it being the faucet that you turn on or off, or depending on, hey, you know what? You want a little bit of flow in the beginning and then you want to have more flow. Well, guess what? You can do that because you have an automated scalable way in order to be able to get leads into your business. Remember, leads are just people who are interested in what it is that you may have to offer. And so that's what we're talking about here when we talk about specifically Facebook advertising. Now, also remember, we've talked about this in the past, is that Facebook advertising is just one of the tools when it comes to the lead generation system, right? There are organic methods and there are multiple other paid methods, right? Facebook is not the only platform on which you can run paid advertising. Now, it's probably one of the easiest. We're going to go over some of the pros and cons here in just a little bit, but it is, again, just one of the tools, right? So it's not like we have anything specifically mystical or magical or it's like gospel from God that we got to, hey, use Facebook because it's like the only thing on the planet. No, it's literally just one of the tools in the same way that a carpenter might have like 5 different screwdrivers for a different purpose, right? And there's going to be pros and cons to every single tool that you use. And so in the same way that organic might have different pros and cons, and not just might, it does have different pros and cons, right? In the same way, paid advertising has different pros and cons, and then specifically Facebook, which is a type of paid advertising, has different pros and cons. And so there is no one perfect end-all be-all tool. These are all just different pros and cons that we have to be able to weigh and say, okay, you know what, based off of my skill set, based off of my abilities, based off of what I am able to do, this is going to be the best tool for the job. So not only what I am able to do, but also what job needs to get done, right? So you got to match the two together in order to find out what is the tool that is going to best serve that purpose. Okay, so again, remember, this is the visual that we're talking about here, and we're talking about lead generation specifically and that faucet that you can turn on or off predictably. Okay, and so one of the things that we talk about when we talk about organic or we talk about, being able to put content out there, we talk about branding, the thing about that is that especially when you're getting started off, unless you have a big following, right, on your Facebook profile, organically, you might be able to send maybe something like, let's say, 20 friend requests a day and get maybe like 100 views on your post, right? But with Facebook advertising, you can get get thousands of eyeballs on your post or on your ad or on your copy or on your creative per day. So that's the reason why it's an extremely powerful tool for lead generation. Now, does that mean that it is all rainbows and roses when it comes to Facebook advertising? Of course not. Like we just talked about, it is just a tool and it's going to have its own pros and cons. And so specifically, some of the disadvantages when it comes to paid advertising, and then there's more disadvantages that come to Facebook advertising specifically, but paid advertising in general, right? Whether that be on Facebook or Google or whatever, is that number one, it does involve technology and it does involve time to be able to set up. That's number one, okay? And then number two is that it does require capital and money, some capital and money in order to get started. And you could argue that number three on here also has to do with it requires your skill set to be able to create direct response copy and creative that's actually going to convert. Now, obviously, we're going to be able to walk you through our process, but just because we have a process on how to do it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to pull it off from the get-go just because you follow our process. Because remember, skill equals knowledge times reps, or sometimes, like I say, skill equals reps times knowledge. And so you don't have as much knowledge and you don't have as much reps. Now, we're going to give you as much of the knowledge that we can, but what we can't do is we can't substitute the reps. And so once you have as many reps as we do, and you know what it is that we know, then guess what? You're going to have the same skill that we have. But here's the thing, we cannot do the reps for you. And so that is exactly why, yes, paid advertising, we're going to provide you with the knowledge, but then it's going to be up to you to be able to put in the reps. And so for some of you, those reps might take quite a bit of time to be able to get, depending on how much time you're allocating to this. And so this is why for beginners and newbies who are just getting started, or for some people who might struggle with, any of the above, right? They might struggle with maybe the direct response copy and creative to be able to get it to convert, all of that kind of stuff, right? For those individuals, Facebook advertising and paid advertising in general may not be the best tool for the job. Maybe there's a different tool in the tool belt of organic or branding or content that might serve that specific individual better. And so this is why it's very important for us to talk about this, so that way you understand, like, hey, a lot of people try and sell paid advertising and specifically Facebook advertising because it's easy to get started as like, hey, it's all just roses and rainbows and there's no cons and all that kind of stuff. We want to be extremely real with you, is that, hey, it's a tool, and just like every other tool in the toolbox, it is going to have its own pros and cons. And so obviously we can discuss this more on the instructor coaching calls on a case-by-case, student-by-student basis, because it's obviously impossible for us to just go out there and have a blanket prescription for everyone. Our job throughout all of these trainings is to provide you, hey, this is our process, this is the knowledge that we have to be able to share with you, but then that is where there comes context involved, right? Whether or not this specific knowledge applies specifically to you in your situation, given your skill sets and what you're trying to do, all of that is going to change the details and the nuances of the actual prescription. And so that's why in the medical field, whenever a doctor just prescribes everybody the exact same thing, there's a term for that. It's called medical malpractice, right? Because it's illegal. And so in the same way, a lot of people think that, like, hey, education is just like, hey, I'm just going to be able to apply exactly what I learned on the internet from some guru out there. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of details and nuances that you have to understand. And that's exactly why having a coach, having an instructor, having somebody who's a mentor for you can help you guide you through those nuances, so that way you can be ultimately more successful for the situation that you are in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I just want to make sure that I spend some time on this so that way you're wrapping your head around how important this actually is. Okay, so with that being out of the way, the next thing we're going to go ahead and talk about is really diving in a little bit more into further explaining Facebook advertising. So now that you know that, like, okay, cool, there's like Facebook and then there's like Facebook advertising, right? They're kind of like two separate things, right? And so the thing is that normally when you log in to Facebook, which is the social media platform, right? When you want to message somebody, join a Facebook group, all that kind of stuff, you are logging in at facebook.com, right? However, when it comes to Facebook advertising, as you're going to see in some of the other tactical trainings that we walk you through, it's actually a completely different website. It's a completely different interface. It's kind of like the behind the scenes version of Facebook. It even has its own different domain and login, right? It's actually business.facebook.com, okay? And so that is going to be kind of the direction of the user interface that you're going to use, and that businesses and advertisers use in order to be able to create those sponsored posts or those sponsored ads ads on Facebook. Now, I'm sure if you have ever been a Facebook or Instagram user, you have most likely seen this, because normally they show up about 25% of the time. So there'll be like 3 posts that are from somebody that you're following or a group that you're in or something like that. And then there'll be an advertising. That's kind of like the golden ratio when it comes to advertising there. But this is what they look like on here. Okay. So on Facebook, you'll see it kind of shows up like sponsored posts, and then there'll be some text over here. There'll be like see more. Then there'll be like an image or a video. Then there'll be like a button over here as well. And then on Instagram, it kind of flips a little bit. So the text is at the bottom because the platform works like that. And then the video or the image is going to be at the top right there. Now, what does this mean? Copy. What does this mean? Creative, right? Like the see more. How does all of this work? All of the nuances and the details, we will go ahead and walk you through in the upcoming training sections. But for right now, I just wanted you to be able to have a visual of when we are talking about sponsored posts, when we talk about sponsored ads, when we talk about Facebook and Instagram advertising, this is the visual of what it is that we are actually talking about. Now, a common question that might come up when we actually talk about Facebook advertising is like, yeah, that makes sense, Coach Yassine, but like nobody uses Facebook anymore, right? Like I've heard people talk about how like, Facebook is getting old and like all the people are on TikTok or Snapchat or something like that now. And this is actually a common misunderstanding, because the thing is that the company, Facebook, which is kind of confusing because they actually recently renamed their company Meta. So, okay, the company used to be called Facebook, but they've now actually renamed themselves Meta for the metaverse because, Mark Zuckerberg, they wanted to get away from the Facebook name and they wanted to go ahead and, be a little bit more about the virtual reality stuff. But the thing is that Meta actually owns many different platforms. Now, if that's confusing, let me go ahead and explain this a little bit more for you. Okay, so you have the company, and then you have the products or the platforms that the company actually owns, okay? So before they changed their name, the company name used to be Facebook, and then one of the products and one of the platforms that they owned was also named Facebook, okay? So this is how it actually works, okay? So there is the product, and then there is the company name. Now that they've gone ahead and renamed themselves, they're no longer Facebook, the company, they're Meta, the company, but the Facebook product, the Facebook platform is still there. And so Meta, the company, owns the products of Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus, okay? These are different platforms and products that Meta owns, okay? And if you haven't heard of Oculus, Oculus is a virtual reality company. They have a really cool virtual reality headset and all that kind of stuff, okay? So this is kind of the difference between the company and this is the products, okay? So whenever you hear anybody talking about Facebook advertising, what you're actually talking about is that it actually includes both Facebook advertising and Instagram ads, because Facebook, the company, or Meta, the company, owns both. Now, colloquially, right, that means that kind of in normal everyday language, because it's kind of difficult to say like meta advertising, right? Like nobody really says meta advertising because us all advertisers from the very beginning have just called it Facebook advertising. Technically, it would be, hey, meta advertising includes Facebook and Instagram advertising, but it's kind of like nobody really says that. So I don't want you to be confused. When we talk about Facebook advertising, we are talking about being able to advertise on all of the platforms that Meta owns because it's all the same interface, okay? I hope that makes sense. And so that does also include all of the different placements within those products. So for example, there are newsfeed ads, there are Facebook story ads, there are Instagram feed ads, there are Instagram story ads, right? And so the feed is kind of like when you're scrolling, right? When you're scrolling, that's the feed. And whether you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, those are going to be feed ads. And then there's like the stories, right? The stories that you click through, and then there's going to be ads that are placed on there as well. And there's also many different types of placements that you can do as well. Now, technically, you can also run advertising on Messenger and WhatsApp, okay? There are different placements to be able to run on those platforms as well. I don't think there is advertising for Oculus, which is virtual reality yet or right now, but I'm sure once virtual reality gets really big, I can only imagine what type of virtual reality ads people are going to be able to create down the road. But specifically when it comes to Messenger and WhatsApp, those ad platforms are not as popular to run ads on currently. Now, obviously in the future, that might change. And I know that in certain countries, like I know that some certain countries like in the Philippines or in other countries around the world, they use like Messenger like crazy. And then some countries like in India and those places, they use WhatsApp like crazy. So I think advertising on those specific platforms in those localities and in those countries is much, much, much more popular. But in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia, those kinds of places, typically what we are doing is we're using Meta's platforms to do Facebook advertising on both Facebook and Instagram and not so much on Messenger and WhatsApp, okay? And so again, do not be confused. There's Facebook, the company, which has rebranded to Meta, okay? And so so yes, Facebook is still alive and well as a product. And in fact, many people still refer to Meta as Facebook just out of habit. Now, the other question that might come up is, well, hey, how many people actually use Meta's platforms, right? How many people actually use Facebook's platforms, okay? So here's the crazy thing about this. In fact, about 77% of the entire internet is active on at least one of Meta's platforms every single day. How crazy is that, right? And so a lot of people don't actually realize it. They're like, oh, you know what? Just because I don't spend time on Facebook means like nobody's on Facebook. Come on, like, what are you talking about? Like, you got to realize that the world is bigger than just you and your family or the people that are in your bubble, right? And so the truth is that if you look at the top social media platforms today, Meta actually owns 4 out of the top 5 US social media platforms, okay? So you'll see on here, we got these right here, right? Now, WeChat, this is actually not available in the US. It's actually a Chinese company. And the reason why they have 1.1 billion users is because of the fact that China is so large, right? But when you talk about the top 5 US companies, guess what? Meta owns Facebook, they own WhatsApp, they own Messenger, and they own Instagram. And so that is really crazy when you think of how much attention Meta and Facebook actually owns. And what that means is when they own attention, they own eyeballs, it means that there are going to be advertisers and people who want to be able to capitalize on getting some of that attention, right? There's attention here that belongs to Facebook or Meta or whatever you want to call it, right? And so what it is that businesses want to be able to siphon off that attention towards their products, their businesses, or their services. And that's exactly how the entire business model works, okay? And so what happens when entrepreneurs and business owners and advertisers see that there are a lot of users on a platform? Just like we talked about, attention, eyeballs, right? Attention is the currency in the new world. And so it means that there is an opportunity to get your product or company in front of millions of eyeballs. And that's exactly why Facebook Meta is one of the most valuable companies on the S&P 500, right? And so yes, advertising on Facebook Meta and all of its other products is more than alive and well, and is actually, and frankly, one of the easiest platforms to get started on advertising as long as you follow their advertising policies, which we're going to have a completely separate training section about because of how important following those advertising policies actually is. Okay, so that is specifically Meta and Facebook advertising. Now, the other question that might come up is, hey, but what about other platforms, right? Like, hey, what about, like, I've heard you can advertise on Google, and I've seen like YouTube ads, and like I've heard about TikTok and Snapchat. So yes, it's true that there are other platforms that you can run advertising on, right? Like Google, because Google owns YouTube and search. And so whenever you say, hey, YouTube ads, you're actually talking about Google ads. Again, a common misunderstanding, but again, just like Facebook is owned by Meta, Instagram is owned by Meta, right? In the same way, Google owns YouTube. And so when you run Google ads, one of the options that you have through their interface is to run YouTube video ads, okay? And then there are also platforms like Snapchat and TikTok and many other smaller platforms as well. But the thing is that out of all of these other platforms that you can advertise on, Google, which again includes YouTube and all that other stuff, is really the only contender when it comes to like a major platform for running ads, okay? So normally when people talk about paid advertising, normally they're talking about running paid advertising on either Facebook or Google, right? Or I should say maybe Meta or Google, right? And so that's what we're talking about in terms of the two major contenders. Now, even on Google, like I was alluding to earlier, is that there are many different types of Google advertising. There's display ads, there's video ads, there's search ads, there's app ads. And so usually when somebody talks about Google ads in our industry, specifically the education, info product, coaching industry, normally they're talking about things like video ads or YouTube ads, right? That's normally what they're talking about. But Google is such a massive company when it comes to advertising. In fact, their advertising revenue stream is one of the largest revenue streams because of how much data they own. Many other industries run things, let's say for like display ads. So whenever you go to a website and you'll see like there's ads like on the side of the web page, those are Google display ads, okay? And then also there are search ads. And so for example, whenever you search on anything, those are those ads that show up on the first couple results. Those are Google search ads. And so again, there's a time and place for them, right? But typically in our industry, we're normally talking about video ads is normally what a lot of people are running. And then also on top of that, there are app ads as well. So if you download like an app on, let's say for example, the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store or whatever, inside of your app, Google can actually show ads in there as well. How crazy is that, right? And so literally like Google and Facebook like dominate the world, especially when it comes to advertising and the amount of data that they actually have. And so compared to Facebook and Google, in our industry, very few advertisers run ads on TikTok or Snapchat. Now, there's also word that TikTok is going to potentially be banned in the US because of its affiliation with the Chinese government and all that kind of stuff. And so if that happens, obviously TikTok is going to just disappear overnight. But then again, Snapchat just doesn't have anywhere near the number of users that Google and Facebook and the amount of data that Google and Facebook have. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead and now really compare the difference between advertising on Google and Facebook. Like, why not advertise on Google first instead of Facebook, right? And the reason is because of how big Google's ad platform is. In fact, imagine how much information Google has. Like, imagine how many people use Gmail and use YouTube and use Google search. Like, the amount of information that Google has is massive. In fact, it's even bigger than Facebook. Like, I know it's hard to imagine, but it's even bigger than Facebook with the amount of data that Google actually has, right? And because of that, it's actually a lot more complicated to get started advertising on Google. And it does take a little bit more ramp up time and budget in order to get started specifically on YouTube. And specifically in our industry, when we talk about advertising, they're normally talking about advertising on YouTube because it's very difficult to get kind of like education, info product, search ads or display ads or app ads to work from Google. But again, there's all these different gazillion different strategies. We're trying to simplify it as much as possible. Okay, so if we compare it inside of a table, what we're going to see on here is that we have Meta Facebook, that includes all the platforms there, and then we got Google, right? And we have all the platforms there. And so the pros of Facebook is that it's much easier to get started. It has a very, very simple UI interface, okay? You can get traction very quickly within 4 to 7 days, and you can run image ads as well, right? There are Google image ads, but they're just nowhere near as effective as Facebook image ads. And then they're all a lot more beginner friendly as well. But there are cons to that, okay? Con number one is that Facebook is very sensitive to advertising policy. Like, it's very easy to get your ad account banned if you are not careful. And that's the reason why we're going to have a whole separate training section on the policies of Facebook compliance, okay? Also, on top of that, it's very almost impossible to talk to somebody from the Facebook ads team. So a lot of times, like if you're running into issues, or for example, if you get your ad account banned, like it's a very common thing. Like, you basically cannot talk to anybody on the Facebook ads platform because of how many advertisers they actually have. And then on top of that, Facebook, usually the creative gets burnt out a lot faster. Now, you may not know what creative is yet. Don't worry, we're going to have a whole completely different training section on that. So this will make sense once you get to that. Now, compared to Google, right, on Google advertising, Google is much more lenient when it comes to advertising policies. They don't ban your ad account as quickly. And then on top of that, it's actually much easier to get a hold of a dedicated account rep or an ad rep in order to manually get things reviewed, versus on Facebook, it's basically impossible, okay? And then the ad creative on Google ads specifically can last a very long period of time because of how big the audiences are on Google, okay? So it's kind of like flipped. Facebook and Google is kind of like flipped on that, right? Versus the cons for Google is that it does take more time and it does take a bigger budget in order to get traction. So whereas you could get ads literally live and like producing results within 4 to 7 days on Facebook, on Google, specifically YouTube, it could take as much as like 4 to 6 weeks of testing and production and all that kind of stuff in order to get something actually running. And then normally image ads, which are used on Google display ads, are not as effective as image ads that are used on Facebook and Instagram. And you can that kind of makes sense as well, right? Like when you think about it, Facebook and Instagram are really more of like an image. Like even if you think about Instagram, like if you're an image ad on Instagram, like Instagram is primarily, or has been, originally when it came out, was primarily a image-based kind of platform, right? So it was just like, hey, people posting pictures and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the reason why Facebook has that edge when it comes to kind of image ads, versus Google has a little bit more of an edge when it comes to video ads. Okay, so for the above reasons that we've been talking about here, most of the products and companies are going to start advertising on Facebook first and kind of get traction and kind of prove out, hey, this angle, this copy, this creative, right? Which again, you're going to learn more about, but kind of just proving out the ad a lot more on Facebook. And then down the road, right, you might decide to be able to transfer over to Google and YouTube in order to be able to capitalize on it if you have the budget, okay? But as far as we have seen, right, we ourselves have scaled to multiple millions just on Facebook alone. I know plenty of people who have also scaled to tens of millions, if not millions of dollars a month on Facebook and only using the Facebook advertising platform. And especially when it comes to the nurture strategy that we talk about, which is the community strategy, because of the fact that we're talking about having your people join from an ad onto a landing page to a community, and that community is going to be a free Facebook group most of the time, it just does make more sense to run a Facebook ad right, for them to join a Facebook group. Versus if you run, let's say, a Google ad or a YouTube ad, you might even get people who don't even have a Facebook account. I know that might be unlikely, but it's true. Some people just may not use Facebook as much because they're maybe on YouTube a little bit more. And so that just makes sense that if you're running the community strategy, which is the easiest strategy to start off with in order to get your feet wet as a beginner, it just makes much more sense to start with Facebook advertising. So that way you can get people into your Facebook group. And then when it comes to some of those other strategies, right, we're able to go ahead and lean on some of the other advertising platforms, right? So when it comes to, let's say, the VSL strategy, maybe the break-even funnel strategy over here, the setter strategy, we're not relying so much on that Facebook group, on that Facebook community. And so therefore, we might be able to tap into a lot more other advertising platforms and advertising sources in order to run that traffic over to where it is that we want to do that lead nurture. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I wanted you to be able to have the complete understanding and the foundations of how this works. This is the reason why we will be focusing on these right here, okay? Facebook and Instagram primarily is what we are going to be focusing on. Now, a really quick side note, this is different than boosted posts, okay? Now, some of you may not even know what boosted posts are, but for those of you who may have seen this, like if you have, let's say, a Facebook page, right, which is different than a profile, where I have a completely separate training section explaining kind of what's the difference between a profile and a page and a group and all of that kind of stuff. But when you have a page, you might see sometimes like, hey, you can boost this post, okay? Boosted posts are different because on a boosted post, you're able to just go ahead and boost the reach of that post to an existing audience, right? But what we're talking about when we talk about Facebook advertising, this is kind of what the Facebook advertising platform looks like. Don't worry, I know it looks kind of like funky over here, but we'll go ahead and talk more about it, is that we are not talking about boosted posts, okay? What you're going to be learning throughout this training is actually legitimate Facebook advertising to be able to put your posts in front of audiences that you don't know, like cold audiences, okay? Versus boosted posts is usually more used to put your post in front of people who may already know you, which for most people who are just getting started out, that's not going to be a lot of people, okay? So that's just a really quick side note. And then as we start to close out this training, I want to talk to you really briefly about the pieces of Facebook ads, okay? So this is going to be a very 30,000 foot overview. There's a lot more sub pieces that go along with this, but there are primarily 4 assets that are going to be required that you're going to have to build before you can actually run Facebook ads that we're going to walk you through, okay? The very first one is going to be your ad assets. That's going to include your copy, your creative, and your targeting. Then you have to have a place in order to send that traffic, and that's going to be specifically a landing page, and you got to have a funnel behind that. And then after that, you're going to have a Facebook page, okay, which is your Facebook business page. So you have your ad assets here, right? This is an example of what they look like. Then you got your funnel and tech assets over here. Then you got your Facebook business page, and these are just examples, right? So this is Muhammad Malik, Pinnacle Man Project. You'll see this is our RWA landing page. This is our Pinnacle Man landing page. This was our NutriFit landing page. And then these are examples of different ads. And then you also need to have your Facebook ad assets, which is your Facebook ad account and your pixel and all of that set up as well. So again, we're going to be diving into each of these pieces and the sub pieces within it. But right now, I just wanted to kind of give you a high level overview of what that looks like. And I'll also go ahead and mention very quickly is not to get confused between a funnel landing page, okay, which is many softwares can make funnel landing pages, which a lot of people nowadays get confused, especially beginners. They think like, oh, I've heard about ClickFunnels or Drop Funnels or like all these different softwares that are out there. Like, is that the only way that I can make funnels? No. The reason why we hooked up students, right, our students with the Client Kit is because the Client Kit does funnels just as well, if not better than any of those other softwares. But a lot of times people get confused because they're like, oh, I heard of this guy and he's talking about funnels and the only way to make funnels is on ClickFunnels. And is that true? So that means I got to have a ClickFunnel versus a funnel? No, that's not true. I know it's very confusing. We'll have a whole separate training section on it in the future, but just understand that when we talk about a funnel here, doesn't mean that you got to go sign up for some crazy software. Everything you need, you already have, and we're going to go ahead and walk you through how to be able to actually use all of that, okay? So that is a quick 30,000 foot overview of the pieces of what you're going to need, okay? And so that really is the foundations that we wanted to go over in terms of, hey, what is Facebook advertising? What is not Facebook advertising? Why do we use Facebook advertising? Like all of those initial foundational questions is what we wanted to go ahead and go over here inside of this specific training. So I hope it's now a lot more clear as to exactly what we're talking about. Now, if you have any questions about anything that we've talked about, please make sure you go ahead and drop it as a post inside of the student community. We are more than happy to go ahead and help you answer some of those questions. So that way, it's very important that we all speak the same language so that as we get into the tactics, we are not using words or concepts that you are not familiar with. So now that we're all on the same page, it's going to be a lot easier to talk about everything else that we're going to talk about in the upcoming training section. So I hope that makes sense. Let us know if you have any questions. With that being said, we're going to keep this party rocking and rolling when it comes to the Facebook advertising foundations and get into the next training section. Come one, come all to the structure of Facebook ads training section. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So now that you're starting to get a lot more of a foundational understanding of Facebook ads, you understand what they are, you understand how they're structured, you understand the parts of Facebook, all of that kind of stuff. Inside of this specific training section, we're going to go ahead and talk about the structure of Facebook ads. Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about the anatomy of Facebook advertising and really go over a quick tour of the Facebook ads interface. Okay, and the reason we're going to do this is so that way when we use terms like, hey, Facebook ads versus Facebook ad sets versus Facebook campaigns, right? All of these are different, and we want to help you make sure that you have a visual of what it is that we're talking about, and so that way you have a little bit of an understanding of what those terms actually mean, so that way you can get used to using them. Okay, now I will go ahead and put a warning on here, is that do not worry if this section seems a little bit more abstract for you, okay? Because a lot of what we're going to go over is kind of like screenshots from the Facebook advertising platform. So don't worry if it does seem a little bit abstract, because once you actually log in to the Facebook ads platform, when we teach that to you later on, and you actually walk through of how to create it and what an ad set is and ad, it's going to be much more easier for you to understand down the road. Now, another warning on this is just because we help walk you through this overview right now does not mean that you got to go out there and create a Facebook business manager or an ads account. In fact, right now, do not do that, okay? There's a very specific process that we're going to walk you through, so that way you have a better chance of not having your ad account banned. And so we would highly recommend you do not go out and just create your Facebook advertising account just yet. We're going to walk you through getting all the foundation set up and then walk you through how to be able to create your ad account properly. So for right now, just kind of follow along with this abstract understanding. And then in the future, a lot of this is going to make much more clearer sense to you once we walk you through how to be able to actually create your ad account. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to the anatomy of a Facebook ads account. Okay, so a Facebook ads account is broken down into three main account levels. Okay, so at the very top, there is something called a business manager. Okay, and then underneath a business manager, you have an ads manager, and then you have an ad account. Now, normally you are only ever going to have one Facebook business manager, okay? And then you're only going to have one Facebook ads manager, and you're only going to have one Facebook ad account that is within that Facebook ads manager, okay? So this is kind of how it works. You have your ad account, and then you have your ad account that is within your Facebook ads manager, and then your Facebook ads manager is within your Facebook business manager. Now, unless you have multiple businesses or multiple product lines and that kind of stuff, that's the only reason why you might have like a whole separate business ad account and a different manager and different all of that kind of stuff, right? But for you, for these main three account levels, you are only typically going to have one, okay? I'm going to be very clear with that. You're typically only going to have one. Now, sometimes what we do is for ad accounts, we will sometimes make multiple ad accounts within our ads manager just as backups, okay? But we'll have just one primary one that we use, and we'll have these like different backup ones underneath over here. That's a whole separate thing. I'll walk you through that in the future, okay? Now, what we do here is that on the ad account level, that's where we can do, right over here, we can do things like, okay, hey, when we run ads, where's Facebook going to bill us, right? How are we going to set up our tracking pixels, which if you don't know what that is, don't worry, we'll explain that in the future, right? Where are going to be our saved audiences? Those are kind of the things that are going to be on the ad account level. Now, again, I know a lot of this stuff might be going over your head. It may not mean anything to you right now, but again, stick with me because of the fact that we're just marinating this and planting those seeds, and these seeds are going to become plants and beautiful roses in the future, but right now we're just planting those seeds, okay? Now, the next level to this, are you ready? The next level of this is within that ad account, there are another three levels of hierarchy, which are called campaigns, ad sets, and ads. Okay, so this is what it visually looks like. Okay, so you got one business manager. Within that business manager, you have an ads manager. And then within that ads manager, you have an ad account. Okay, now within that ad account, you have campaigns. And you can have unlimited number of campaigns within an ad account. This is just an example for 3. And then within campaigns, you have ad sets, okay? And you can have multiple ad sets, unlimited amount. I just have 2 on here as an example. And then within ad sets is where you have the ads. And you can have an unlimited number of ads within an ad set, but you're typically only going to have about, 3 or 5 or sometimes even just 1, okay? But you can have multiple. So this is kind of how the hierarchy works, okay? So you typically only have one of these. But then within the ad account, you have multiple different campaigns. And then within a campaign, you have ad sets. And then within an ad set, you have different ads, okay? And so again, throughout your entire advertising career on Facebook, you are going to have many different campaigns that you create and many different ad sets that you create and many different ads that you create. And we're going to walk you through all of that, okay? Now, what does this actually look like on the Facebook advertising interface? Now, stick with me. I know this is going to look very abstract, but this is what the Facebook advertising interface looks like, okay? So right now you'll see on the top, there's a tab for campaigns, and then there's a tab for ad sets, and then there's a tab for ads. Now, where is the whole business manager, ad account, and all of that kind of stuff? Because that is a foundational thing that's kind of like in the background because you only have one of those, right? But then where most of your work happens for Facebook is on the campaigns, ad sets, and ads, okay? So right now, we are clicked on the campaigns. So these are all the campaigns. And then as I'm going to show you in just a second is that when you click on one of these campaigns, it'll then show you what are the ad sets that are within that campaign. And then if you click on the ad sets, it'll show you what ads are within that ad set. Okay, so let me go and walk you through. Let's go and talk about each of these three pillars right now. Let's talk about these three levels that exist within the ad account. Okay, so let's talk about campaigns, let's talk about ad sets, and let's talk about ads. Okay, so level 1 is going to be the campaigns, right? That's what we're talking about right here. Within the ad account, you got campaigns, okay? So again, we can have an unlimited number of campaigns within an ad account, but usually you're going to have about 3 to 4 campaigns running at any one given moment, depending on the type of ads that you're running, okay? So the campaign kind of acts as the bucket for the ad sets and the ads underneath it, okay? So you might segment your campaigns based off of different things like objectives. You might segment them based off of different types of budgets. There's a lot of different ways around ad account structuring. We're going to show you our process of it, but like everybody has their own kind of theories on how they like to structure it. But again, we're going to show you our process of it, okay? Now, on the campaign level, there are specific settings that we can set that would impact both the ad sets and the ads within the campaign, okay? So again, let's go ahead and show you what the campaign interface looks like. This is what it looks like when you actually click. You see right here, the campaigns tab is what is selected here, okay? And once that campaigns tab is selected, this is where we can see all of our different campaigns right here, boom, boom, boom. And you'll see over here, this is the toggle for whether or not the campaigns are turned on or off, okay? So these campaigns over here, and obviously you can set a name to, there's like, you know, different ways to name them and different like setups on how to name them and all that kind of stuff. Everybody has their own different system for this. And then over here, these campaigns are off and then these campaigns are on. And then the delivery tells us if they're on or not, right? So the reason why, even though these campaigns are on, but the delivery is set to off is because the ad sets are turned off. So if the campaign is on, but the ad sets are turned off, the campaign really isn't running, right? I hope that makes sense. And then there's the budget, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that are a bunch of different metrics here that we're not going to dive into right now, okay? Now, what happens is that I can go in and click on this link right here, and it's going to go ahead and allow me to then edit the settings of the campaign, right? So you're going to see on here, this is what it looks like, PMP Workshop Cold Traffics campaign. And then within this is the campaign. And then it shows me, okay, these are the ad sets. This is the ad. This is the ad set. You see it's like 4 squares over here. And then we got 1 ad over here. And so that's how the campaign is structured. The campaign is the bucket for all of the ad sets and ads that are within there. And then over here, you can see you have the campaign name. I got like a special category. I can set the buying type, the campaign objective. I can do different testing, campaign budget. So all of these are different settings. Again, I know this is very theoretical. This is very over the head, very abstract. But again, we're just planting those seeds for you to be able to understand the high level overview. So some of the settings that we can set on the campaign level are the campaign objective, which is like, what are we optimizing for? Are we optimizing for video views? Are we optimizing for leads? All that kind of stuff. And we can also set the campaign budget if we choose to use campaign budget optimization, which again, it's a little bit complicated, a little bit more advanced. I'll talk to you about it in the future, okay? So that is the campaigns level. What now about the ad set level? Let's go ahead and talk about that right now, right? So within the campaign, you have multiple ad sets, okay? You can have 1, you can have 2, you can have 3, you can have 4, you can have an unlimited number of ad sets within a campaign, but you're normally going to only have like 5 or 10 running at any one moment based off of the budget that you have, okay? So again, the ad set acts as the bucket for your ads. And so in the same way that the campaign acts as the bucket for both the ad sets and the ads, the ad set acts as the bucket for the ads, okay? I hope this is making sense now, okay? Now, the reason why the ad set is special is because on the ad set level, this is where we have different settings for things like targeting. So this is where we can go ahead and target, let's say, for example, we want to put our ads in front of like Lululemon, or we want to put our ads in front of people who really are into fitness, or we want to put our ads in front of people who are parents. Like this is where we control that setting on the ad set level. Also, we can go ahead and specifically target locations. So we can target entire countries, we can target specific zip codes, we can target specific income ranges, we can target specific genders. So let's say we want Facebook to only show this ad to men or only show this ad to women. We can also target specific age ranges. We can also target on the ad set level different placements, like, hey, do we want this to show on Facebook, on Instagram, on Facebook news feeds? Do you want it to show up on mobile? Do you want it to show up on desktop? Do you want it to show up on both? All of these are settings that we do on the ad set level. Now, let me show you what the ad set level interface looks like on Facebook. Now, again, once you actually log in and you create your ad account, which again, don't do that right now. We're going to walk you through it in the future. But once you do that, you'll be able to play around with this and it'll make a lot more sense. But here's just an example from one of our test ad accounts, okay? So you'll see here, we've now clicked, right? So what happened was we were on the campaign level in the previous screenshot. We clicked on one of those campaigns. So you'll see that's why it says one selected. And now we're on this tab right here, which is it's showing the ad sets for one of those campaigns that we clicked on. And you'll see that all of these ad sets are turned off, but you'll see on here, it says this is affiliate marketing. That is the interest that we're targeting. Show this ad to anybody who is interested in affiliate marketing. Show this ad to anybody who's interested in business opportunity. Show this ad to anybody who's interested in a home business. Show this ad to anybody who's interested in passive income, right? So this is the interest. And then once we actually click, right? So you see here, this is a blue link. We can actually click on this, right? We can actually click on this and hit edit on this. And once we hit edit on this, it'll pull up all of the different settings within that. So again, you're seeing a kind of behind the scenes on this, right? So before we were looking at the campaign level and we were looking at these settings over here, and then we had all the settings for the campaign here. But now what's happened is that we are now clicked not on the campaign, we are now clicked on the ad set level right over here. And this ad right here is looking at, it's putting this ad in front of Optimum Nutrition. You can see we can put the ad in front of people who like MyFitnessPal, people who like First Form, people who like Peloton, people who like Les Brown, Lewis Howes, Fitness Bootcamp, right? Quest Nutrition. These are all different interests. So when we're clicked on this, you can see we can target, hey, what location do we want to put these ads in front of? What are the age ranges? What is the gender, men or women, right? And then also we can go ahead and put, hey, what is the interest targeting we want to do? And then down here, there's like placements. And then we can also go ahead and set other settings on here. So this is what happens on the ad set level. Okay. So it is on the ad set level where we set up all of the settings around the ad set budget, depending on if we're using the ad set budget. ABO is what it's called. But again, that's advanced. We'll talk about that in the future. You can also set up the audience, the targeting, the placement, the optimizations. All of that is what you do on the ad set level. Okay, so I hope this is starting to make sense. It's very, very kind of linear. It's very structured. It's very easy to understand as you get more and more reps with it. And it's actually really nice the way they've set this up. And so this is the reason why a lot of people say that the Facebook UI and the ads platform, they've invested a lot of time and a lot of effort to make this simple. And that's why it's so easy to get started on versus on other platforms like Google. And when you're trying to run YouTube ads and that kind of stuff, it's a lot more complicated than this. But the hierarchy of Facebook ads is by far the simplest and easy to be able to understand because it's extremely logical. Okay, so now that we've talked about the campaign level and the ad set level, now let's go ahead and talk about level 3, which is going to be the ads level. Okay, so again, quick recap. The reason we're not talking about these is because you set these up one time and then you're pretty much done. Okay, so you never have to worry about these again. And then where most of your work happens is on the campaign level, the ad set level, and the ads level. So we've talked about the campaign level, right? There's certain settings that you do on the campaign level, and then there are certain settings that you do on the ad set level, and now we're talking about the ads level. Now, just like all of the other things that we've been talking about, on the ads, you can have an unlimited number of ads that are running within an ad set, okay? However, you will normally only have about 1 to 3 ads running within any ad set based off of the performance of those ads. So again, we'll walk you through all of these things later on, but just to kind of understand that at a high level, okay? Now, it's on the ads level where we can actually set, hey, what is going to be the copy and the creative? What is going to be the text that we run in the ad? And what is going to be the creative, the image or the video of the ad, okay? And so just like ad set level had different settings, the ads levels where we can do other types of settings, okay? And so when you think of an ad, right? Like when you think of like an ad that you see on Facebook or Instagram, this is typically this is the level that you're seeing, right? It's kind of like the ad level on here. And so when we talk about the interface for the ads level, so you'll see on here what has happened is that before we were on the campaign tab, right? We clicked on the campaign tab, then we looked at the ad set tab, and now we're on the ads tab over here. And the ads tab is going to show us, hey, these are all of the ads that are running within that specific ad set, as well as the budget for them, and it'll give us like their delivery and all that kind of stuff. And then when we click on edit for one of these ads, it'll then pull up this dialog box right here. Okay, this is what the settings look like on the user interface. And so again, before we were looking at the campaign level right over here, right? It was a workshop campaign and we had all these campaign settings. And then after that, we looked at the ad set level, which was optimum nutrition. And then we had all of these settings for the ad set, which was like the targeting and the age and the gender and all that kind of stuff. And now we're one layer deeper than that. So we're like here, this was layer one, this is layer two. Now we're one layer deeper than that and we are within the ad set. And then it's on the ad set level that we can say, hey, this is the text that we want you to run. And then this is the image or the video that we want you to run. And then it'll go ahead and pull up kind of the different variations of, okay, this is how it's going to look on Facebook. This is how it's going to look on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. It'll give you a preview of that. Okay. So it's on this ads level. It's on this screen right here that we can set, okay, hey, what page do you want this ad to run on? What is the ad type? Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be an image? That kind of stuff, right? What is the actual creative that you want it to be? What is the copy, aka the text that you want to run, right? What are the headlines that you want to show up right over here, right? What is the URL that you want when people actually click on the link? Where do you want it to go to, right? What is the description? What is the call to action button? Do you want it to say learn more? Do you want it to say like, some other things? All of that is the settings that you can set here on the ad level, okay? And so this is really when we talk about the anatomy of a Facebook ads account and really the behind the scenes of how it actually works. The reason why this is so important to understand is so that way when we're actually building everything out later on, this is going to be a foundational critical training section for you to come back and review, so that way you can understand how all of this actually works, just as a really quick tour of this, right? So now we've talked about, okay, these are the 3 one-time setup things that you're setting up, and then you got your campaigns. There are certain settings that you do on the campaign level. Then you got your ad sets. You can have unlimited number of ad sets, but you're typically only going to have like a handful. And there's certain settings that you do on the ad set level. And then there are certain settings that you do on the ad level. Now, again, I know I've said this a lot of times, but I want to remind you, I know this is abstract and vague, right? It's very theoretical for you right now. But once you actually get into the Facebook ads platform and you start putting in the reps daily, right? Because you literally are going to be logging into this interface on a daily basis to look at your numbers, to look at your data, to make sure that your lead generation is going good, to optimize, to test new things, all of that kind of stuff. Eventually, you're going to be able to understand the Facebook ads platform like the back of your hand. I promise you, it's going to be very, very easy. Just like everything else in education and in life when it comes to learning something, it's a skill that you can acquire, and it's just knowledge times reps. The more reps you put in, and then you're going to acquire knowledge. You're going to be like, hey, Coach Yassine, like I'm trying to find this. Oh, hey, I tried to do this. Or like you spend time, browsing through. You're going to learn a lot more stuff, and you're going to have reps around this stuff. And so right now you're getting some of that knowledge, but most of that knowledge you're going to learn from the actual reps. So that way when you run into an issue, you're going to get even more knowledge then. So for right now, just stick to this overall understanding. And then over time, it is going to get more and more clear for you as you tinker with it, as you get into it. And you're going to be absolutely amazing at this. I have no doubt about it. And so with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this specific training section when we talk about the structure and the anatomy of Facebook ads and a Facebook ads account. I wanted you to at least have a visual representation of everything. So that way, when we actually talk about like, okay, you got to launch this and you got to create this creative and you create this copy and you got to get all this set up. Like now you have an idea of like, okay, this is what the end result looks like. And this is what I'm actually going to be tinkering in and actually messing with when the time comes. Now, the time's not going to come for a while because there's a bunch of assets that we have to prepare. In fact, most of the work when it comes to Facebook advertising, like 80 to 90% plus of the work happens off of the Facebook advertising platform. And we create all of these assets and then we just go ahead and compile and put everything together when it comes time to actually run it. And we do that via the interfaces that we went ahead and showed you inside of this quick tour. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is this training section. I hope you found a lot of value of this. If you have any questions about this or anything that we've talked about, please make sure you go ahead and drop a post in the student community. Or hey, even if you don't have a question, we love to hear from you. Maybe you had some insights, you had some ahas. Maybe you've ran Facebook ads in the past. Let us know in the community, right? Go ahead and cultivate that community relationship because it's absolutely vital in your entire process. With that being said, this is Coach Yassine checking out, and I will catch you in the next training section. All right. Welcome back to the Facebook Advertising Foundations. This is going to be a training section that's all about the stages of launching Facebook advertising, okay? Especially when it comes to launching Facebook advertising for the first time, we're gonna go ahead and talk about 3 specific stages that you have to understand when it comes to this entire process, okay? So stage number 1 is what we call the pre-launch setup. This is gonna be where there's a lot of building that happens. And you'll see that this is really the longest stage, and we'll talk about the details of this, but you'll see like we went ahead and created this diagram on purpose that like, all of these sections are divided according to how much time it will actually take. And so the pre-launch setup is the longest time that'll take throughout this entire process, okay? Then stage number 2 is actually launching the ads. It's pretty straightforward. It's very simple to do. And then stage number 3 is what you ongoingly manage for the rest of your career, is just optimizing and scaling. And then you launch some new ads and then you optimize and scale. Then you launch some new ads and you optimize and scale. And you really just nurture your Facebook ads so that way they are producing the best results for you. So let's go ahead and talk about each of these 3 stages in greater detail so that way you understand exactly what we're talking about. So when it comes to the pre-launch setup, what we are talking about in the pre-launch setup is that you are going to be doing 5 things, okay? Number 1 is you're going to go ahead and create your ad asset. This is what you're doing in stage number 1. This is the first thing, okay? You're going to be creating your copy and your creative. The copy is the text that is in the ad, and then the creative is the actual visual, image or video that happens in the ad. That is the first thing that you're going to do, and it is probably the most time intensive because you got to think about it. There's some research involved. There's some swipe files. You got to think about your pain and paradise points, all of that stuff. The copy and the creative is probably the most important thing to get right in the beginning, or at least give it your best shot, because you never really know if you got it right until you actually look at the data, but you're going to give it your best shot, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, which is the second thing that's going to take the longest, is setting up your funnel asset. So this is going to be where we teach you how to be able to set up the tech for the funnel so that way everything is built out for you in the client kit. Now, we've mentioned this in a previous training. Do not let people sell you on the fact that like, oh, I got to have some sort of special software in order to run a funnel, okay? A funnel has been around for literally decades and decades and decades and decades, but a lot of people nowadays, unfortunately, have tried to convince beginners and newbies who are just getting started that like, hey, you need a funnel, which is true. Funnels are great, but the thing is that there's many softwares that allow you to be able to create funnels, but a lot of people try to sell you that this is the only software that's the best software on creating funnels, and a funnel is this magical thing, this unicorn that if you have a funnel, you'll be successful. That's not how it works, okay? So we're going to walk you through that, as well as walking you through some of the limiting beliefs and unfortunately some of the scams and all that kind of stuff that are out there when it comes to trying to sell you on some magic pill that is maybe a funnel, okay? So we'll talk about that, but that is point number 2 on here, which is setting up your funnel assets. Point number 3 is then going to be all about setting up your Facebook ad asset. So this is going to be things like we got to set up your Facebook page, we got to install your Facebook pixel, we're going to have to create your ad account, all those one-time projects that we got to do in order to get everything rocking and rolling. We got to verify your domain name with Facebook, all of that kind of stuff, okay? After that, the 4th piece of the pre-launch setup is the research and preparing of the targeting and the audiences that you're going to run, right? So where are you going to actually run your ad? Like which audiences are you going to run in front of, right? So yes, the first most important thing is the copy and the creative, but then the thing is that if you went ahead and create copy and creative for, let's say, like moms or dads or something, like that, that's your market, but then in your audiences that you're targeting on Facebook, you're putting it in front of like, single dudes, or like you're putting it in front of like, people who are not parents or something like that, right? It's not going to work. And so it's very important to make sure that you have not only a great ad, but also the right audiences. And so researching the right audience is going to be a key part of this process. And then finally, you're going to go ahead and set up tracking. This is very important, especially after the iOS 14.5 update that happened, that Apple devices, basically most of them are not able to be tracked on advertising platforms anymore. You got to make sure that you set up the tracking, okay? Now, this was something that was basically impossible for beginners to do, but as of recently, we have been able to crack it by allowing our students to have the client kit, and the client kit has actually done an amazing job of being able to simplify this so that way you're able to be successful with this and have amazing tracking out of the box. So we're going to give you the KPIs and the metrics that you need to hit in order to get that rocking rolling. So again, all of these things are going to be the things that we go ahead and talk about in the pre-launch setup. Now, what you're going to notice on here is that none of these things, well, other than like the Facebook ad setup, like yes, this has to do on the Facebook platform, but like 90% of your work, like this is not happening on Facebook, this is not happening on Facebook, this is very little happening on Facebook, and then this is some of it's happening on Facebook. But like there's no building on the Facebook ads platform as much. A lot of your work is happening off of Facebook first, which is the preparation aspect of all of this. And so the reason why this is very important important to understand is because preparation when it comes to this kind of stuff is literally everything, right? As Sun Tzu said many years ago, he said that every battle is won before it is fought. And that is so absolutely true when it comes to advertising, Facebook advertising, but advertising in general as well, is that really the preparation is what allows you to be able to win the battle and be successful with this long term, right? Abraham Lincoln had a quote that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. This is what we're talking about here, is that the pre-launch setup is that sharpening of the axe, because that's where most of your time is going to go. And the actual launching of it is actually going to be very, very straightforward. And so this is the mindset that you need to have in order to be successful with advertising in general, regardless of where you are going to be advertising, right? It's all about the preparation before you create the ads on the Facebook ads platform. And so yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Stage 1, the pre-launch setup, is going to be the most intense part of this entire Facebook ads launch process. But if you don't do it properly, you're going to struggle. And if you do it properly, the rest of the stages are going to be really, really effortless for you as you go through this entire process. Now, because it's going to be the most intense part of the process, this is why for some of you, this stage is going to take quite a bit of time, right? Because of the fact that you're going to have to create those assets. It might take you a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how much time you're going to be spending on this, depending on how much experience you have with this, all of that kind of stuff, because you're going to be creating the ad copy. You're going to be creating the ad creative. You're going to be creating or setting up the funnel and the audiences, all of this stuff. And a lot of this stuff is sometimes even one-time projects that you're going to be able to use for months and months and months. We actually launched one ad, one copy, one creative, one funnel, and honestly, like only 2 or 3 audiences. Like one time we launched and we literally scaled that thing up to $1 million in cash collected. Okay. And so we didn't change anything. We literally just ran the business and we collected over $1 million in cash, all because of that one-time setup. And so I show you this and I share that with you, not to toot our own horn, but to share that with you so that way you understand like, hey, this is going to be really a one-time setup for you to be able to do. And it's going to take a lot of effort, but it's going to be absolutely worth it, because without the foundation, you will not be able to be successful with any of the other stages. Okay, so that is stage number 1, which is a pre-launch setup. After stage number 1, which is a pre-launch setup, we then have, which is the launching stage. Now, the launching stage is actually quite straightforward, right? So what you're going to be doing here is you're going to launch your first campaigns, you're going to test your first ads, and you're going to start to scale the winning ads. So you're going to basically have a testing period. We're going to walk you through this entire process, but you're going to have a testing period of a low budget for like 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days, where you collect data to see if the ad is working or not. We're going to walk you through the KPIs and the metrics of what is a winning ad, what is not a winning ad, all that kind of stuff. And you're going to kill the loser ads. You're going to turn those off, and you're going to start to scale the winning ads. Now, this is where the Facebook advertising platform really starts to shine, because within the first 7 days, like within the first 4 days, really, you're going to know which ads are winners and which ads are losers. And you'll be able to scale within the first 7 days and really start to be able to get as many leads as you want if your budget allows and the rest of your sales process is going good. Because remember, this is a flow, right? So just because you solve lead generation doesn't mean that lead nurture and sales and product has been solved, right? So you solved one piece of it, like we talk about in the 5 functions of business, but this is really where like other platforms like Google, where it might take you like a couple weeks in order to really get traction and get everything going. On Facebook, you can get traction very, very, very quickly. And so in this stage, it's only going to take you about 7 to 14 days, depending on if your initial ads are successful or not. But throughout those 7 to 14 days, you are getting leads through the door. You're starting to get on calls. You're going through this entire process when it comes to actually launching your ads. So that is going to be stage number 2. After that, we then have stage number 3, which is optimizing and scaling. So this is where we're going to continue to optimize. This is where we're going to see, hey, okay, this ad is running good now, but then we check next week and then all of a sudden the ad is not running good. So we got to turn that off and we got to do some ongoing testing and we got to scale our winners and all of that kind of stuff, right? Now, ongoing testing, specifically in stage number 3, which is going to be down the road for you. But once you get to that point, ongoing testing is very important, because if you don't continuously test new ads, new copy, new creative, new audiences, then you are going to hit a roadblock in your Facebook advertising career, because no matter what you do, eventually your current ads will stop working, and you got to have a bank of proven, tested copy, creative, and audiences that you are ready for when that happens. Okay, so what you do is you just basically allocate a very small budget, and we're going to walk you through the entire step-by-step for this, but you allocate a very small budget to test on a regular basis. So that way you basically test, okay, it's proven, then you turn it off and you store it in your bank. And now you got all this bank of proven copy, creative, and audiences that when your current ads stop producing, then you can go ahead and just launch those proven copy and creative, and you know that you never have any gaps in your lead generation. Okay, so again, this is going to be the stage that is ongoing throughout the history of your Facebook advertising career, because this is where you're just continuously optimizing, scaling, ongoing testing, and all of that kind of stuff. But again, that's going to be a little bit later down the road, but we're going to walk you through it, everything step by step by step. Okay. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the stages of launching Facebook advertising. Okay. And we're going to walk you through exactly where to start and walk you through it step by step and show you our process of this. But remember, just because you're getting the knowledge, that doesn't mean you have the skill. The way you get results in life is skill plus identity. The skill is going to happen from, yes, the knowledge, but then you got to see, have I put in enough repetition and experience to get the skill? And then do I have the belief and the character traits, right, which is the identity piece of it, in order to actually pull this off? That is how you get the results. And so if you don't have the result that you're looking for, where is the deficit? Is it the knowledge? Is it the reps? Is it the belief? Or is it the character trait? And we've talked about this many times in the past. I'm not going to go over it right now again. However, you understand the point. And so later on inside of this training sections, we're going to talk to you about where exactly to start and walk you through that. But for right now, this is just the overview of the stages of the launching of the Facebook ads process. If you have any questions, let us know. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the next training section. All right, here we go, continuing the Facebook advertising foundations. This is going to be absolutely critical for you to understand when we talk about the critical foundations, which is your messaging. So here's a question for you. Do you remember all of the research that you already did on your market, right? We talked about the people, how they identify themselves. We talked about their pain points. We talked about the paradise. We talked about your SPICE framework, unique mechanism, right? Specifically, when we talk about market research, we're talking about the people, the pain, and the paradise, right? Do you remember how much research you did with that, right? How intense and how deep you went with the people, the pain, and the paradise? You literally had multiple documents filled with all of the research that you had created with that, right? You went deep on the pain web and the paradise web. And I said you went, meaning hopefully you did. If not, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a wake-up call here that literally none of your Facebook advertising, spoiler alert, is going to work unless you actually have that. But hopefully you remember, hey, I went deep on the pain web. How does this pain impact the rest of their 4 areas of life? How does this paradise impact the rest of their 4 areas of life, right? You went ahead and figured out, hey, what is their current situation? Where are they trying to go? Where is that gap? Do you remember how much you actually learned about your market, right? We talked about the swipe file and the market research and, hey, what is the offer and the messaging that all of the other players in the marketplace have, the successful players in the marketplace. You have an entire list of who the other players in the marketplace actually are. The reason why this is important is because all of this is going to be a requirement in order for you to be able to get Facebook advertising to work. In fact, your Facebook advertising or your advertising in general is 100% going to fail without the critical requirement of having your market research first. Point blank. Straight up, I'm going to be 100% honest with you right now, okay? Is that I'm telling you that your Facebook advertising will 100% fail unless you've actually gone ahead and done the work to do your market research first. Yes, you heard me right. Coach Yassine, what are you saying? Yes, you heard that right. There is literally no point of you even trying to launch Facebook advertising campaigns without first having your messaging and communication clear, okay? There's literally no tactic, no persuasion technique, or any kind of like magical thing that you can learn to be able to go ahead and make up for the fact that your messaging is not clear, okay? Messaging must be clear. Otherwise, what the heck are you communicating, right? Because here's the thing. Advertising and paid advertising in general is like fuel, okay? What it does is it basically takes what you have and it puts fuel on it, and it basically, like a rocket, launches it to hundreds of thousands and millions of people, okay? And so what happens is that if your messaging sucks, you're not publishing, you don't have any spice, you're not clear as to who you're targeting, why you're targeting them, their pain points, their paradise, all that kind of stuff, okay? And if you're not able to go ahead and get that clear without money, well, guess what's going to happen when you put a fuel on this and you put a whole bunch of money behind this and you launch it to the moon and show it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people? What's going to happen? If it sucked when it was small, it's not going to suck any less when it's big. And so you got to understand how important this actually is that you can actually be in a big hole and mess yourself up if you are not actually making sure that you have a very good feel of what your market wants, exactly what they will resonate with, and exactly what that might actually look like. And so this is why we say Ladies and gentlemen, why importance of publishing consistently is so important, right? We talk about, hey, as you're learning, you got to be sharing. If you're not learning while you're sharing publicly or you're talking about it out loud, you're not going to be able to pick up on the patterns that people have within the industry. What are other people who are serving your market talking about, right? If you're serving moms, are you consuming podcasts and videos and articles from other people who are also serving moms, right? And then what is your framework hypothesis, right? Are you sharing that framework hypothesis? Do you have enough reps of talking about your stuff over and over and over and over and over again, in which you can sound like you're actually very confident about what it is that you're talking about, right? And so even now, as you hear the conviction in my voice, you hear the certainty in my voice, right? I always say this: confidence is for boys and girls, certainty is for men and women. Confidence is like, hey, you know what? I got to convince myself because, I think I'm confident. Versus certainty is like, hey, I have done so many dang reps is that I am absolutely certain as like, hey, the sun is going to shine, and then, if I turn on the faucet, water is going to come out from my kitchen sink, right? I've done it so many freaking times that I am certain that it is going to happen, right? And so that is what we're talking about, is you don't want to be confident about your messaging. You want to be certain about your messaging. How do you get to the point that you are certain about your messaging? You get to that point by doing reps and reps and reps and reps again and again and again and again. We've talked about the rule of 100, right? 100 publishing podcast episodes or 100 pieces of content that you've put out there. You've gone ahead and tested the framework, proved it with others. You've become a prolific expert on that framework. Now, doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be like a, Tony Robbins, influencer with hundreds of millions of followers and you're like, okay, cool, now I can run Facebook advertising. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is you got to make sure that you at least have a hypothesis that in some way, shape, or form has been proven. You have a hypothesis that in some way, shape, or form is clear. Because again, if it is not clear when it is small, all paid advertising and all Facebook advertising is going to do is going to put fuel on that fire. It's going to put money on that fire, and it's going to launch it to the big leagues and put it in front of the masses. It's going to put it in front of a bunch of people. And what's going to happen is that if it sucks, those people are not going to click on the ad. They're not going to want to opt in. They're not going to want your free asset. They're not going to want any of that stuff. And now guess what? You spent all this money and now the ads aren't actually converting. Now, here's the thing. I remember when I first started learning advertising years ago, okay, my mentor scared me about the same thing. And so I actually ended up waiting too long to start paid advertising. So I don't want to scare you so much either, right? There is a balancing point. I know, for example, right now, right, we got to be able to kind of put it in the middle, right? So like, yes, there's like a scaring element to it. And then it's like, hey, I'm going to be just reckless and just like, not have anything, right? We want to have the balancing point right here in the middle. So it's very important to understand, hey, I don't want to scare you too much because yes, a lot of your ads probably are not going to work. And that's fact, no matter how good you are, but the data is going to tell you. So you're going to set aside a budget and you're going to go ahead and really go ahead and look at the data, and the data is going to tell you, hey, is the ads working? Is it not working? What can you improve? All that kind of stuff. We'll walk you through that. But I'm trying to go ahead and push anybody who's like super reckless about it and like, I just want to go ahead and like, I'm going to help like, dog moms. And I'm a guy and I've never owned a dog before, but you know what? I'm really passionate about helping dog moms. Like, come on, like you got to be realistic and not reckless about the fact that like, hey, do you actually have Spice and the messaging and the, people, pain, and paradise really dialed in? Is this are these the people that you are called to serve? Are these the people that you're going to be able to be the hero of? Are these the people that if they saw you on an ad, they're going to be like, yes, that is the person I want to follow. I want to opt in and get their free assets. If not, you're just being reckless, straight up, right? But at the same time, I don't want to scare you either. So that way you're too far on this side of the spectrum. And you're like, you know what? I got to get into perfectionism. I got to get everything perfect. You got to balance it and be right dab in the middle. Now, what is a test to see if you are actually in the middle or not? Is that here's a question for you. If you are not publishing on your podcast and in your community or by any other means consistently, then I would say that you're probably being reckless, right? And so you want to make sure that you have enough of those experience talking about those topics that are actually valuable to your audience and your market, okay? And so if you have not done that yet, then you haven't yet gotten all the iteration that you need. And what that's going to lead to, okay? What is it going to lead if you have not been consistently publishing via your podcast or any other medium or to your community or XYZ, right? If you haven't done enough of those reps, and when I say enough of those reps, I'm talking about like 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 podcast episodes. If you have not done that yet, what that's going to lead to is this right here. It's going to lead to failure of epic proportions when it comes to Facebook advertising. This is what the outcome is going to look like. You're going to launch Facebook advertising and you're going to say, hey, coaches, hey, community, This didn't work for me. I'm lost. What's happening? And my question to you will be, how many pieces of published content did you put out there? I'm not talking about, hey, are people listening to me? I'm doing this because I'm trying to get leads off of my podcast or from my community. No, that's not what I'm talking about. We're going to help you do paid advertising to get leads. But remember, the point of publishing is not to be able to go out there and get the leads. You're doing the publishing for yourself. We have talked about this in the past. The publishing is for you to find your voice, to be that ground for you to be able to test your messaging so that way it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And so when Facebook advertising doesn't work, my question to you is going to be, hey, have you published 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 podcast episodes? And maybe for a lot of you, it's not going to be 10. It's going to be probably more around like 40, 50 to 100, okay? Because that is what's going to take for your messaging to get clear. Now, does that have to take a long time? No. If you do one every single day, you could do that in 100 days. That's like 3 months. That's not terrible at all. But the issue though is that too many students don't want to put in the dang work because they're nervous, they got too much anxiety, they don't want to put themselves out there, all of this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Remember, results equals skill plus identity. If you're having that identity, you haven't yet created your becoming journal, and you haven't created that new identity and that new future and that new desired situation that is pulling you, that makes you excited for who you are becoming, and you're just doing this out of fear and scarcity and you're super scared, well, guess what? You're going to flop on your face and it's going to be very, very bad. And so this is why I would urge you to make sure that you are doing it properly and understanding how critical this actually is. Because I am sure you don't want this, right? I hope not. I hope you are very, very clear about this. So if you want to make sure that you really get this to work, you have to make sure that you really do get inside the head of your market. And we've already talked about this in detail in the previous trainings. We also talked about the importance of publishing. We've talked about all of that, right? People, pain, paradise, all of this. We've already talked about it with worksheets and all in insane detail. So make sure that you are going back and doing that in more and more detail. And then on top of that, publishing while you are going through that process, okay? So you need to make sure that you have a very detailed understanding of what your market sees, says, thinks, feels, and hears, okay? You want to be able to understand their perspective, their worldview, their emotions, their beliefs. And so if you are not publishing consistently and you're not speaking to your audience regularly, then you need to make sure that you do that first. I know I'm like beating the dead horse unicorn over here, but I hope this can actually make sense to you. You need to make sure that you go out there and do that first, so that way you can get clear on your messaging to your market. Otherwise, Facebook advertising will not work. How many times you got to say it? Okay, so remember, preparation is everything. Every battle is won before it is fought. This is the mindset that you got to have. We've already talked about this in the previous training section. This is the mindset that you got to have with Facebook advertising, and honestly, with any advertising period. It's all about the preparation even before the actual Facebook platform. It's all about being able to get that set up properly. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about the critical foundation, which is your messaging, your publishing, and your voice. So that way everything else is effortless for you. Once you have your spice, you have your voice, honestly, everything else becomes effortless, right? You have angles for your copy. You have clear creative because you've talked about this stuff enough times. You know the audiences that your people are going to be interested in, so that way you can target it on Facebook. Like literally everything becomes effortless after this main thing, which is your messaging, your spice, your voice, like all of that, right? If you can get that taken care of, the certainty that you have around that, then everything else is just the business tactics. And trust me, the business tactics are just like, hey, do this, get the knowledge, do it a bunch of times, get the reps, and you're rocking and rolling. And so for a lot of you who are like, hey, this business process is taking me a long time and what's going on? Well, the question I would ask you is like, hey, it's not the tactics, because if you fix your identity, the skills are actually pretty easy to learn. It's just the knowledge times the reps. But what about the identity? And your identity, I would urge you to question, might be the thing that is holding you back because you're not actually putting in the work, right? You're not actually having the identity of being a resilient and person who actually has the grit to put in the work, so that way you can be successful with the tactics. But once you figure the identity piece out, right, and you know how to actually make your bed, for lack of a better term, when I say make your bed in terms of like how to be an A player, how to be a winner, not to be somebody who's a limbic lallu, how to have a winner's mindset. When you have that, any tactic that you do is 100% going to work because you have the winning mindset, and that is ultimately what matters the most. And so again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been this training section, the critical foundations, your messaging. If you have any questions about this or anything we've discussed, make sure you go ahead and drop it in the student community. Or hey, if anything resonated with you and maybe this time around it really stuck and it really, really singed and burned deep inside of your mind and you're like, man, that really hit home, let us know inside the student community. That would be amazing to hear from you. With that being said, let's go ahead and keep this party rocking and rolling when we talk about the Facebook foundations, and I will catch you in the next training section. All right. Here we go. The much anticipated, or maybe not so much anticipated, training about Facebook ads compliance. Man, this is so important. I cannot tell you how important this actually is, because you may or may not have heard, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but Facebook is a bit of a pain in the butt when it comes to their advertising rules, okay? Like, honestly, more than any other platform. Like, Google isn't even that bad around this. Like, I've heard TikTok is pretty bad about this in terms of compliance, but like Facebook probably takes the king in terms of being a pain in the butt when it comes to their advertising rules. Like, they don't care one bit at all. They will just ban accounts left and right, even by accident. They're like, oh, banned you by accident. No problem. Like, you're banned. They don't even care. Okay. And so now, truthfully, it is their house and they have one of the biggest advertising platforms on the planet. And so, yes, they do get to make the rules. Okay. And so, unfortunately, the truth is that when we are using these platforms to be able to go ahead and get that attention, it's their house and we got to play by their house. Right. And so, a couple of things to keep in mind here is that Facebook is a platform. They own the eyeballs and it's their house. And therefore, just like everybody else, whenever you do something else on somebody else's property or you go to somebody else's house, right, what you got to do is you got to respect and you got to play by their rules. Or if they kick you out of the house, we can't really complain either, right? Now, if they do it by accident, that might be a different story. Like, yo, dang, Facebook, what the heck was that? That was dumb. Now, most of the time, I know, we joke around about it, and it's a lot of times because us as marketers and advertisers, we're kind of butthurt by it. But the truth is that it's usually because we neglected some rule or something like that, and usually is our fault. And so I don't want to kind of put all the blame here on Facebook. The truth is that most of the time, it's not, I don't want to create this culture where we're just blaming Facebook and all this kind of stuff, because the truth is that if we take the time to read the advertising policy, understand what Facebook's intention is, understand exactly how they are creating these rules, you can 100% stay above board. It's very, very, very rare that anybody who plays above board actually gets their advertising account suspended. Okay, so the thing you have to understand is that Facebook's number one concern is that they really only care about the user experience. Because if you think about their business model, the reason why they make money is because people use their platform. Now, if advertisers go out there and have even some ads that piss people off, what's going to happen is that people are not going to want to use their platform, right? The brand reputation of Facebook is on the line because of some people who might be putting ads out there that are offensive to people, which Facebook is not going to put up with, right? And so they care about user experience, right? They care about user experience so much that they care more about it than the money that you pay them, because they know that if they care about user experience in the short term, then in the long term, what's going to happen is they're going to make more money overall. And so the thing is that if you mess with the user experience, they will 100% kick you out. And even if you are paying them a lot of money, like the money that we pay them is like chump change, right? Like I'm talking about, especially when you're getting started, like if you're paying a couple $100 a month to Facebook, like that is absolutely like less than pennies for them, right? Even for us, right? We're at the point where we're spending maybe $30, $50, $100,000 a month in advertising, right? Even that's chump change, because some of the bigger brands are spending like millions of dollars a month in advertising on Facebook. And Facebook doesn't even care if they're like, hey, you're spending millions of dollars a month with us, you mess around with user experience, we're kicking you off. And so even if you pay them a lot of money, Facebook doesn't care, because they only care about the user experience. And so the question that you want to ask yourself all the time as you are advertising on Facebook is like, hey, how does my Facebook setup, how does my Facebook ad look from the perspective of a Facebook employee, or from some of these fraud bots? Like, so Facebook, because there's so many ads that are being launched and like millions and millions and millions of ad accounts, what's happening is that Facebook has these bots that go around that are basically artificial bots that are basically designed to go ahead and see if something is a fraud, if something's like not good, especially after Facebook went through the crackdown with the whole like Russia thing that happened a couple years ago, where there was like some people, they didn't have as much regulation back then. And so then some people ran some ads, promoting Russia and like swinging the election or something crazy like that, like some legit like big stuff, right? And so after that, Facebook got even more like, hey, we're just going to chop down the hammer and chop down the axe and just make it very, very difficult for people. So they're very, very stringent on these things. And so what you want to look at is like, hey, how do my ads, how does my setup look like from the market's perspective? Like if I was a user on Facebook, is this something that I would love to see in my newsfeed? Like, is it actually positive? Does it actually make me feel good? Like that kind of stuff? Or is it making me feel bad? Does it make me feel bad about myself? Like, is it calling me out? Is it offensive? Especially in kind of the society we live in now, in which like a lot of people are just like, oversensitive Nancy's sometimes. But the truth is that we just live in those times. And so sometimes you put something out there and like, it's not even that offensive, but hey, if somebody reports your ad and then all of a sudden you get the hammer put down on you, Well, you're not going to be able to go out there and be like, oh, dang Facebook, No, you just better play better on the safer side rather than end up with your ad account banned. Okay. So that's a big, big warning on there. And so if you ever want to know like, hey, what does good and bad look like on the Facebook advertising platform? Just look at like, okay, from that lens, what would a scammer look like with their, Facebook page, with their business, with their business manager, their ads, their landing pages? Like if you're going to be a fly-by-night business who is going to come in, scam a bunch of people, take their money and run, how would it look? And a lot of times you can see like, hey, they wouldn't have like a website. They wouldn't have like, like some proper linking. They might they might be some kind of shady thing. It might look like super tacky, like doesn't look professional, right? So you want to think about like, okay, what does a legit company look like? And what does like a scamming kind of thing look like, right? And so Facebook stereotypes people 100% based off of, hey, even if you look similar to the bad guys, you may not be a bad guy, right? You might be a good person. But even if you look similar to the bad guys, well, guess what? Facebook got no time for that, right? Like Facebook got millions and millions and millions of ad accounts. It's going to be like, oh, you look like a bad person, ban you. You look like a bad person, ban you, right? So you got to make a very big effort. It pays because remember, Facebook is going to be an amazing tool, amazing partner to partner with you in order to actually get you unlimited leads in your business. And so you want to make that effort. You want to go above and beyond to stay on Facebook's good side as much as possible. Okay. And so it is 100% a partnership that you want to stay on the positive side for, because if you get banned on Facebook, like and your ad account goes down, like, no, does that mean you're out of business? Of course not. Like, unfortunately, like on other platforms, I remember back in the day when we used to sell on like Amazon or like, e-commerce and that kind of stuff. If like you got millions of dollars, I remember I used to run an e-commerce company that was like millions and millions and millions of dollars in inventory. Okay. And like if Amazon banned our account, where we're out of business, like we got millions of dollars in inventory and we're like straight up out of business. Well, if Facebook bans your ad account, it's not the end of the world. There's people with like, you can do like Instagram influencer advertising, there's Google advertising, there's organic, like there's other platforms out there, but it's kind of like one like thing that you've now lost. It's like one really good tool that was in your tool belt that you're like, it stings, right? You don't want that to happen. And so you want to make that effort to stay in a good partnership with Facebook as much as possible. Okay. So one thing I want to emphasize here is that getting kicked out of the Facebook house, right? Some people end up getting really upset and they kind of complain when they get kicked out of the Facebook house. So yes, it's upsetting, 100%, it stings. But the truth is that if you were running a house party, right, where you had literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people at this house party, right? You wouldn't be afraid to kick out a bunch of people, even if they only made one mistake, right? You're like, hey, it was just one mistake. Like, I didn't mean it. Facebook doesn't care, right? Like Facebook's got millions of people at the party. Like even if you just make a mistake and like it was by accident, Facebook does not care. They're going to kick you out and say, hey, good riddance because we don't need you. Okay. Facebook simply just does not have the time or the bandwidth to literally interview every single person and like, hey, does it look like this is a person, a good person, All Facebook does is it looks at the signs and it makes a decision, okay? Facebook doesn't care about whatever money that you're spending on their platform because again, remember, there are people who are spending millions of dollars per month, okay? They don't need your money. And so I'm just emphasizing the same point over and over and over again, which is that it is highly, highly recommended that unless you want to lose your Facebook advertising privileges, because that's what it is, it's a privilege, you want to make sure that you are playing the game according to what Facebook actually wants. And sometimes it's not even clear what Facebook wants, but you got to kind of know behind the scenes. And that's what we're going to show you from our experience, what we've done, like two-factor authentication, making sure that you're actually like secure, your accounts are secure, that no hackers can get in, like all of that stuff Facebook looks at as well. So we're going to kind of give you some pro tips as we go along. And this is the reason why we said wait to be able to set up your Facebook ads the way that we talk you through. Don't just create an ads manager and create a random Facebook business page and and do all this stuff, right? Because you may not do it accordingly and then you get your Facebook ads manager banned. So you don't want that to happen, okay? So you want to make sure that you are keeping Facebook as a good friend. And as long as Facebook is a good friend of yours, they're going to continue to help you grow with unlimited leads in your business. And you can make millions, if not tens of $millions off of the Facebook advertising attention that they own. And so you want to make sure that you are playing according to those rules. Now, having said that, the question you might ask is, what are those rules, right? So let's go ahead and talk about that. Rules for ad account survival, okay? So the very first rule is going to be to go ahead and read and be familiar with the advertising policy from Facebook. this is the beautiful thing about it, is that Facebook actually tells us what the dang rules are, but most people just don't take the time. Unfortunately, just like we talk about, human beings don't want to take the time. They don't want to put the effort. They don't want to do the energy because of our limbic selves to actually do the dang work and read the dang Facebook advertising policy, okay? And so it is a must read to be familiar with the rules of what Facebook does and does not allow when it comes to advertising. And so there is a link in the guide, or you can just Google Facebook advertising policies and it's going to show up. It's like transparency.facebook.com. But again, Facebook changes this stuff all the time. I wouldn't be surprised because they recently rebranded their company as Meta. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in and like changed the domain names to Meta instead of Facebook. Right now, they're at Facebook, okay? So this is the reason why it's kind of confusing. We still call it Facebook sometimes. We call it Meta sometimes. It's all over the place. But again, you can just Google it, Facebook advertising policies, and read and be familiar with those so that way you understand, hey, what are the things you can and cannot do, okay? Rule number 2 is that you want to make sure you keep a clean business manager. Remember, business manager is that top level category. You want to make sure you have a clean business manager with a registered company, a proper credit card, an address. You want to make sure that it's all in alignment, okay? You don't want like, okay, your registered company is with a different name, and then your credit card is with like your Aunt Sally's name, and then your address is like some random address in like, some crazy country or something like that. Like Facebook sees that and they're like, okay, this is scam. Ban. Like it's literally just as simple as that, right? So you want to make sure that everything is in alignment and everything looks like, okay, everything checks the boxes, everything looks very clean, okay? Third rule is you want to have a clean Facebook business page, okay? What that means is like, hey, you want to have a couple likes, you want to have some recent posts set up, right? You want to have some up-to-date information, some photos, all of that stuff so that way it looks legit. It's not like, okay, this scammer just made this page and like an hour later they're trying to run an ad. Because if you think about it, right, like a scammer, they're not going to try to like seem legitimate, right? A scammer, let's say, for example, let's just use like the Russia example, right? If somebody's trying to create some kind of like scamming thing, they're going to be like, cool, I'm going to like create a page. And then like within like 10 minutes, I'm going to run an ad. And then I want to run this ad to millions of people. And then I'm going to just go ahead and have all this misinformation spread. And then I'm just going to like get out of there. That's how a scammer thinks, right? And so if you're like in this short-term scarcity mindset, then automatically it's going to make its way into the work that you're doing and you're going to seem like a scammer. So that's rule number 3, okay? Clean Facebook business page, okay? Rule number 4 is you want to try and keep the tone of all of your ads. And when we say your ads, specifically your ad copy and your ad creative, positive, okay? You don't want to piss people off. You don't want to be negative on the platform. I know in marketing, there is kind of like this thing where like, the more feathers that you ruffle, the better you're going to be able to get traction on your ads. But that's great for organic when you actually like, maybe on your individual platforms that you're doing, not for advertising. On advertising, you want to try to make it as positive as possible, okay? Because Facebook wants to have people have an enjoyable experience. So you don't want to use images that piss people off, like lame stock photos, tacky images, that kind of stuff. Like I know in marketing and in advertising, the more like, out there you can be and have like really offensive pictures and stuff, like it might get a lot of attention. But again, not for advertising. You don't want to use, I'm not saying you should use that in general, right? Like in general, I'm not like, that's not my taste of kind of advertising and marketing attention, but there are people who do that, right? But again, you don't want to do that on advertising at all. You want to make sure that you're keeping everything positive, okay? Number 5, keyboard warrior. You don't want to go all keyboard warrior with the negative haters, okay? The truth is that when you show your ad to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, you're going to get plenty of people who are going to be like, scam, terrible, not good, all this stuff, right? Now, we have some pro tips on how you can actually make sure that certain words get filtered on your comments underneath your ad. So like swear words and like really bad words and all that kind of stuff. Because hey, the truth is that if you show your ad to 1 million people, 1% is still 10,000 crazy people. 10,000 crazy people is a lot of crazy people, okay? And so if you have 10,000 comments that are crazy comments on your comments, it's going to happen underneath your ad. It's going to happen, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure you don't take it personal, okay? In fact, you don't even, if you can turn off the notifications for the ads and comments and stuff like that, we would highly recommend it. Do not go all like, keyboard warrior with the negative haters. You're going to get in fights with them and you're going to all this stuff. No, you can just delete the comment. You can ban the person. Otherwise, you can just straight up just ignore it. That's typically what we do because a lot of times when you get some of those comments, then you get some people who are supporting you and then they kind of have like a fight in the comments, which is good. You want the people who are looking at the ad fighting in the comments because the more comments your ad gets, the more Facebook is going to push it because it sees it as engagement. But you don't want to be the person going in there and then like pissing people off. You do not want to do that. Not good at all, okay? Then rule number 6 is exaggerated claims. You don't want to make unrealistic claims and you want to avoid buzzwords and like money income claim promises and that kind of stuff. So like exaggerated claims is like, I will help you lose like 20 pounds in like, 6 hours, or I'm going to help you like, make a crazy amount of money and like this, whatever. Like those are all exaggerated claims, buzzwords, like, income claims, crazy promises, that kind of stuff. Not good. Facebook does not like that because again, Think about it from their lens, right? Like a scammer is going to want to do that, right? Somebody who's trying to just like gouge people out of crazy amounts of money, right? Rule number 7 is you don't want to call the audiences out, right? You don't want to say things like, hey, are you a struggling parent? Are you miserable? Are you fat? This is actually a rule that we learned the hard way because unfortunately we broke this rule and we started calling out our audience like, hey, are you a parent? Who is this? Are you a this? Like we weren't doing like, are you miserable or fat? But we were like, hey, calling the audience out. And Facebook doesn't like you calling somebody out because it can see that as offensive or like somebody might take offense to that and that kind of stuff. And that kind of goes along with rule number 8 on here is you want to try to not use the word you or your. So you can use the word like I, right? So like I learned this new method, and I got these results, right? That's how you can kind of get away from the exaggerated claims because you're just talking about yourself, right? You're not calling anybody out. You're not making any exaggerated claims. You're just talking about yourself and the things that you have experienced, right? So it's legit. But if you use the word you, then it can kind of seem as very offensive to Facebook. So it's like, hey, are you this? Are you this? Are you that? Like, You want to try and avoid that because you can end up getting your ad account banned for that, okay? That is rules 6, 7, and 8. All of these 3 kind of go together in the same bucket there. Rule number 9 is to go ahead and use legitimate domain names. Okay, so we'll talk more about this once we get into the tech side of things and the tech tutorials, but you want to use legitimate domain names. Okay, so you want to use your own legitimate domain names. So we're going to walk you through the setup for that. But like there's things that are called shared domains. So like if you're using a software like the Client Kit or like ClickFunnels or DropFunnels or Kajabi or like any one of these gazillion softwares out there, right? Obviously, we help take care of all the Client Kit stuff for you. So that's the one that we're going to show you and walk you through. But the point being is that we're going to walk you through how to set up your domain so that way all of your websites and all of your tech and all of your funnels and everything are on your domain in the Client Kit. So that way you're not using like, okay, hey, it's like yasin.theclientkit.com/21-day challenge, right? That's not what you want to use because Facebook sees that as like, okay, a scammer would do that because a scammer wouldn't take the time to literally go there, buy a domain name, set up the domain name and do all of that kind of stuff, right? So that's rule number 9. Rule number 10 is compliance on landing pages. This is very important, is that Facebook, when they are approving your ad account and approving your ads, because there's an approval process where they're going to review all your stuff before they let your ads go live, what they actually do is they use crawlers, they use like softwares that will go and scan the actual web page that you are sending traffic to. And so in this case, we're going to be setting up your landing page in the Client Kit. And then when you actually put your ads live, Facebook is going to review your landing page to be able to see, hey, does it have a privacy policy? Does it have terms and conditions link? Does it have any income disclaimers if you're doing like a biz op money kind of thing, right? Does it have maybe a contact page? Does it look legitimate? Like, is it making any crazy claims on the actual landing page? And so that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that it's not only the Facebook ads that you run that has to be compliant, but also the landing page upon which you are sending that traffic to has to be compliant as well. So again, if you think about it from the lens of a scammer says, cool, I know this about Facebook. They're going to ban if I use the word you, exaggerated claims, call out the people, all this kind of stuff, right? So cool, I might do compliant ads over here. But then once they get off of Facebook, I'm going to go ahead and have the most offensive, terrible things on here. This is the landing page over here, right? Facebook is not going to allow that either. Why? Because if you come off of a Facebook ad and over here, you go over to like, God forbid, like some pornographic thing or some crazy like offensive thing or something, you're going to attribute that like, oh, dang, Facebook allowed me to be able to go to that website, right? Like Facebook allowed that to happen. And so you got to think about it from that lens. Facebook doesn't want to be involved with any of that, right? You might be serving ads in front of kids or something. And then all of a sudden you're sending, them to some crazy website or something like that. So Facebook, when you're going through the approval process of having your ads approved, Facebook is looking at, okay, what is in the ad, right? Is it exaggerated claims? Are you calling the audience out? Does it look legitimate? And then what's on the landing page, right? So for example, Facebook doesn't allow before and after weight loss pictures, right? Either on the ad or on the landing page. That is a tough lesson that we also went through, that we learned as a pro tip, right? There's also certain language that Facebook will not allow on the landing page, okay? So all of these are things that you have to be careful of to make sure that you don't get your ad account banned. Now, sometimes if you get lucky, Facebook will give you a slap on the wrist and just say, okay, cool, your ad got disapproved because of this, but sometimes, a lot of times, Facebook might not even give you that just slap on the wrist. They might just go say, cool, you're shut down, not allowed, boom, that's it. And so that's why you have to be very careful. So we're going to walk you through that process so that way you can do this properly, okay? And then finally, rule number 11 over here. And when I say finally, it doesn't mean that these are the only rules. These are just some of the big rules that we wanted to talk to you about. There are many other rules that you're going to learn as you go along with this, okay? Which is that you want to maintain a 10-to-1 approve to disapprove ad ratio at all times, okay? So what's going to happen again, you're going to launch an ad. And then sometimes Facebook may actually disapprove your ad. They might not ban your account altogether, which would be terrible. They might just disapprove your ad and say, okay, cool, this ad did not get approved because of this, and this reason, okay? If you have an ad that gets disapproved, you want to make sure that you have a 10-to-1 approved to disapprove ratio at all times. That means that you want to make sure that you get 10 ads, right? You get 10 ads that get approved for every one ad that you get disapproved. So this allows your ratio to be favorable. And so that way you got to be extremely careful of this. And as long as you keep this ratio in check, every once in a while, yeah, sure, you're going to have an ad that gets kind of disapproved. But as long as most of the ads that you have gone ahead and pushed through were ones that were actually good, then you're going to stay on Facebook's good side. Okay. So having an ad that got disapproved is not the end of the world, but it's a very, very, very dangerous sign. So you got to make sure that you are very careful of that. And obviously we'll walk you through that as well. And you can always ask us questions and we're happy to help. Okay. So again, are these the only rules when it comes to ad account survival? The answer is no. And this is why we highly recommend before launching any ads that you run it by the community to say, hey, is this offensive? Do you think this would be good? Is this going to be compliant? So compliance is going to be key, okay? Until you feel confident that you know how to be able to create ad copy and creative that is going to be compliant to Facebook advertising policies, okay? So unfortunately, if you get your ad account banned, your options become much more limited to the things that you will be able to run paid traffic on. So, right, you won't be able to run paid traffic on Meta, Facebook's platform anymore. And so then you're going to either have to go around, you're going to maybe have to appeal the decision, and then you may not get the ad account back from there. And then from there, you're going to have to maybe try to go to Google ads or do organic. You got to do something else, Instagram influencer advertising, all this other stuff if you get your ad account banned. Okay. So again, it is just one tool. I think a lot of people like to poo-poo on Facebook advertising, but the truth is that anybody who plays this identity politics, oh, Facebook advertising is bad. No, come on, man. It's a tool, right? And if you use it, it's an amazing tool. And there's other tools that you can have in your tool belt as well. So unfortunately, a lot of people are like, oh, there's going to be some people are like, oh, there's a Zuckerberg snap. Zuckerberg is going to just snap. And then all of a sudden, Thanos snap in Avengers, you're going to lose all your ad accounts and everything's going to be terrible. So therefore, you shouldn't use Facebook advertising. No, you can differentiate. You can kind of diversify your advertising platform. It's a smart move. But in the beginning, you want to try to stay above board and you want to make sure that, hey, you can't learn 10 different platforms. So you're going to learn one platform at a time. You're going to grow your business, and then over time you can diversify and have traffic from many different sources. But for right now, that is what we wanted to talk about when we talk about Facebook advertising compliance and making sure that you are on the right side of your friend Facebook and making sure that you're using it as a tool that is going to allow you to be able to grow your business. So again, if you have any questions about this, I'm sure you're going to have a lot more questions once it actually comes time to launch your ads. But again, this is the reason why we prepare ahead of time. So that way we prepare our ad creative, our ad copy, our funnels, our landing pages, all of that we prepare off of Facebook platform. We can kind of mess around with the language, make sure it's clear, all that kind of stuff, make sure it's compliant as much as possible. And then we're going to walk you through running some test ads to make sure that they get approved first before we launch all of our other ads. So there's an entire process for this that we have so that way we can make sure that we try and make sure that your ad account stays as safe as possible. Of course, it can never be 100%, but we try and we have some pro tips around this that we will walk you through. So with that being said, this has been Facebook Ads Compliance. Let's keep the party rocking and rolling with the Facebook Advertising Foundations. I will catch you inside of the next training section. All right, my friends, the party continues. We're going to go ahead and get into this training section about where to start first. And so as we start to wrap up this Facebook advertising foundations, the question you might have is, okay, this is good. I understand a lot more about Facebook advertising than I did before. Now, where do I actually start? Okay, so now that you have a solid overview of Facebook advertising, it's now time to actually get started with the launch process of your Facebook advertising. So we talked about this in a previous training section, right? We've talked about stage 1, which is the pre-launch setup, stage 2, which is the actual launch, and then stage 3, which is optimizing and scaling. So we're going to go ahead and get started on stage 1 over here because like we've talked about before, it is the most intense process. Now, inside of stage number 1, which is the pre-launch setup, there are going to be multiple pieces, okay? Now, the part of the pieces that are going to take the most amount of time is actually creating the ad assets, like the copy and the creative, right? The text and the image and the video or whatever. And then funnel assets, it's going to take some time as well. Then setting up your one-time Facebook ad assets, research and prepare, and then set up and tracking. So we're going to start with the parts that take the longest first. So the parts that take the longest first are going to be the ad copy, the ad creative, and then the funnel and the technology and all of that kind of stuff to hook everything together. Okay. So all of this is what's going to happen. That's going to happen off of the Facebook platform. So what you're going to see is that the next couple trainings are going to walk you through the foundational understandings that you need in order to be able to create amazing ad copy, ad creative, and then all the funnel and all that kind of stuff. Now, we're going to walk you through our process of this. Now, again, remember, results equals skills plus identity, right? And skill equals knowledge times reps. Yes, you're going to be able to get our process and the knowledge that we have around this. But if you want to be able to have the skill and then more importantly, the identity is only going to happen from the reps. And then if you're actually doing your becoming process and doing your TBJ, so that way you can have the identity of somebody who is actually a marketer. Very, 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 very important. Okay, so we're going to start off with this. That's going to be the foundations. And then we're going to go over to the one-time projects. What are the one-time projects? A lot of the one-time projects have to do with the Facebook assets, right? So setting up your business manager, setting up your ad account, like those are like one-time projects, okay? Setting up your tracking, again, one-time projects, and then researching and preparing your targeting. Most of the time it's a one-time project. Yes, you can kind of like top it up and get more and more targeting, but like normally with like one swoop, you can have targeting that's going to last you a very long time. So we're going to do that after we first finish these 3 parts over here, which is going to probably take the most amount of time. So again, this is what the visual looks like. Okay, we got pre-launch setup, stage 1, stage 2 is the launch, and then stage 3 is the optimize and scale. And so this is going to be where we walk you through all of the tech tutorials, the setup, and then after you've gone ahead and submitted things like your ad creative, your ad copy, your funnel setup, all of that, you'll then be able to move on to the actual launch section. Okay, so again, remember, preparation is everything. Every battle is won before it's fought. The Facebook advertising battle is won before you even start Facebook advertising. This is what we're talking about, right? Go ahead and give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'm going to spend the first 4 actually sharpening the axe. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get rocking and rolling with the pre-launch and get all of your assets built so that way you can go ahead and launch. And I want to just go ahead and close out this training with a quick reminder about this results formula, okay? This is very important. Sometimes some students, unfortunately, and I know when you're a beginner, you're like, man, this is taking such a long time. Now, here's the thing. It took us like 9 years of learning and beating our head against the wall and like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn what it is that you are learning right now. Now, we're doing our best to try and condense that time frame so that way it doesn't cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars and it doesn't cost you years and years and years and years of time. But the truth is that even with all the knowledge that we're able to provide you, all of our processes and that kind of stuff, we cannot shortcut the reps, and we absolutely cannot shortcut whether or not you have the identity of being somebody who is a marketer, having the identity of somebody who is actually a Facebook advertiser, having the identity that is calling you, that is pulling you, and you say, you know what? I am version 2.0 of myself that is the Facebook advertising king or queen. I am the Facebook advertising expert. I am the Facebook advertising savant. Like if I was trying to get good at Facebook advertising, I would literally right now, and I've done this in the past, I would literally create an entire TBJ in this module that would all be around becoming Yasin, the Facebook advertising savant. And I would literally look at that every single day, becoming Yasin, the Facebook advertising master. And I would look at that every single day and I would be excited about the identity, the version of myself that I am becoming. And who is that identity? Who is that version of myself that I'm becoming? I'm becoming the version of myself that has the belief and the character traits that are required and necessary for me to be successful with advertising, paid advertising, and Facebook advertising. And so yes, there's going to be plenty of things that you've never been exposed to throughout this entire training as copy and creative and funnel setup and advertising and all of this stuff. But again, we're trying to shortcut that as much as possible. And sometimes we even want to set the expectation with our students. We're like, man, how do we get students to just have patience? Because it takes time in this game in the same way, like, hey, even if it took you 3 years to be able to learn how to be able to make an income online, well, here's the thing. You probably went to school, right? Like if you're a career professional, you probably went to school in some capacity, right? Maybe you went to college, XYZ, right? You took maybe 3 or 4 years to get your bachelor's degree, and then you graduate, and then what are you making after you graduate your bachelor's degree? In person, in a job? Peanuts, right? So to be able to make an income online, to be able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not, honestly, we're at the point now where after studying this for 9 years, everything just clicks, right? We've paid down our ignorance tax so much that everything clicks, and now we're able to make millions of dollars online. But it didn't start that way. It happened because of the fact that we were able to beat our heads against the wall and have the resilience and the grit to stick with it over a long period of time. And so unfortunately, I try to talk to students, and we try to talk to students about this as much as possible, is to understand that you cannot expect to have a career change and then say, I'm going to make money within 6 months and I want to be able to quit my job and make this full time within 6 months. The thing is, like, even to get the job that you have right now, it probably took you a very long time, and you had to go through school, you had to go through all that stuff. Otherwise, you probably weren't getting that job straight out of middle school or straight out of high school, right? Exactly. So what makes you think that you're going to be able to just snap your fingers and then all of a sudden be able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars online? It doesn't work that way. And so yes, we're going to provide you the processes, the knowledge, and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to condense that time frame so that way it's easier for you to be able to go through that process. But what you cannot shortcut is the reps and the experience and the skill set that you need to learn, right? You got to have your Rocky cutscene, you know how Rocky's going through the movie and he's doing through the training and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you got to be able to cultivate that identity in order to then be able to get the results that you want. So again, I know we talk about this a lot, but literally this is the game. This is the game of how you succeed. Skill plus identity, and then you can have the skill of mind management, not to go limbic, to understand how the psychology of the mind works, to have self-awareness. All of that is so paramount and so critical for you to understand. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, that is a long-winded way to end this specific training, which is, hey, where do I start first? You're going to be starting with the assets and the foundational things that you need to build first, specifically the ad copy, the ad creative, and the funnel foundations from there. So let us know if you have any questions about this, if there was anything that resonated with you about this, any wins you have, any struggles you're having. If you yourself are struggling from the mindset of like, hey, I'm really struggling with scarcity mindset and wanting to be impatient and want this to happen overnight. Like, I'll be honest, I'm struggling with this. Drop that in the student community. Let us know. You will be surprised at how many other students are struggling with that exact same thing. And guess what? It's so much easier to actually play a multiplayer game in which you are multiple people are all supporting each other because you guys are all struggling about the same thing, rather than struggling alone and suffering alone and thinking you're the only one who's dealing with that, which is not true. There are so many more people who are dealing with what it is that you're dealing. So if you're struggling with any of those mindset things, cultivate that relationship, drop it in the student community, and we will be happy as a community to help you along the way. So with that being said, this is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.